Hey look, it's a save icon.
Oh, I love trash.
And I think I just broke off the end of that. Well, apparently the most dangerous thing I'll do today is taking this outside. I was just about hit by a car when I opened the door out there. There's a saying, don't turn it on, tear it apart. And usually that's used by people who like to see the insides of things before they start using them. But that's essential with old computers. And for this Mac Classic, I have to use this embarrassingly long screwdriver to get it open. I always feel a little bit like Joker when I pull it out. This Macintosh Classic, built in 1991, is almost as old as I am. It was my aunt's first computer, and fortunately for me, she kept it stored in a nice case in her air-conditioned house. Not every old computer's so lucky, but no matter what it looks like on the outside, the first thing you should do if you ever get one of these things, don't turn it on. In fact, don't even plug it in. There are two major problems affecting many old computers: leaky capacitors and leaky batteries. And unfortunately, at least on this Mac, fixing both of those problems requires opening it up. The battery is one of the most likely parts to leak corrosive chemicals all over the place, a silent killer for many of these old systems. I've spent a lot of hours watching someone like Brankus Creations and Mac84 restore corroded traces on old motherboards, and let me tell you, I don't know how they have the patience for that. And unfortunately, on the Classic, getting to the battery requires taking the entire case apart, so you have to have a long screwdriver like this one. Once I got inside, I pulled out the motherboard, and the first thing I did was pull out that battery. By some miracle, this West German marvel of engineering didn't leak. And according to MacBatt.net, apparently this was the only one of the 3 batteries Apple shipped that wasn't known for leaking, so I guess I averted that crisis. Looking around the rest of the insides, there's mostly just a layer of dust. And it looks like I was pretty lucky with this machine. It looks like my aunt chose the nicer model that had an included quantum hard drive and a memory upgrade card. Today, I'm going to go back inside and recap the motherboard and the analog board, which involves replacing a bunch of capacitors, these things, and some of them are pretty beefy. Now, a huge word of caution. These old computers with CRTs and power supplies built in have deadly voltages, so make sure you know what you're doing. CRTs especially can hold thousands of volts of charge even weeks or months after you turn them off, so you have to follow the right safety procedures. And after I recap everything, I'll upgrade the battery to a coin cell type, which hopefully should never leak. And I'll also max out the RAM while I'm at it. I bought these little coin cell battery adapters from MacBatt on Tindy, and these RAM chips from Mac Memories on eBay. A couple megs of RAM today is a lot cheaper than it was 40 years ago. Now, I don't know if this Mac even boots. One big risk of turning it on before recapping it is if any of the old capacitors are ready to pop, they could explode when you power it on. And right now, things look relatively clean. When you explode a cap, there's a bunch of the capacitor guts that get on everything, plus it stinks like crazy, especially for the bigger ones. And even though this Mac hasn't been booted up in decades, I'll still follow all the safety precautions. It's better to be safe than dead. Now, repairing vintage electronics, there are some tools that you absolutely have to have, like a soldering iron of some sort is going to be pretty essential. This is a Pine-Sol, which is like $25, $35. Pretty good for starting out, and it's pretty portable as well. There's a lot of other models you can get. You'll need some solder usually. You'll need some solder braid to remove stuff, or in my case, I got like the Porsche of desoldering. This is a desoldering gun, which has a pump in it that sucks solder away from a motherboard. Then there's a variety of other tools, like you might need certain pliers, or you might need a toothbrush to clean things. I have my little alcohol pump. This is isopropyl alcohol. You can find that even at like your corner store. So you'll need a lot of these things if you want to do a good job, or some things if you want to do anything with these computers. So one cool thing is it's a good way to get into the hobby, because an old computer might be worth 30 bucks or 100 bucks or whatever, something a lot cheaper than a new one. And you could learn how to solder and desolder things. You can learn how to take things apart and put them back together. Usually the first time you do it, you're going to break something, and that's okay. Let's start cracking into this thing. I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way, things that I won't need right away. Here's the bag of capacitors. I bought these from Console5.com. Console5 has pre-built kits for different vintage computers and old consoles and things. So very nice to have these instead of having to like find all the parts on DigiKey or some other website and buy all these things. And this is going to be used for safety. And I also have these glasses. I don't always wear safety glasses when I'm working on computers, but sometimes when you're doing things like with the desoldering gun, it can like shoot a little bit of solder. So it's a good idea to have some protection. And these don't interfere with anything, so why not? But let's get this thing cracked open. And I do have a desk pad here, which has a little bit of solder stuck on it. But it's nice to have something soft on your desk when you're working on these, because you're gonna have to set it down like so, right on its face. And if you have something sharp, it could pierce that, and you do not want to destroy the vacuum inside of a CRT. Anyway, let's get this taken apart. The whole reason for this thing is these two screws, which are buried way down in there. And you don't need something specialized like this. They actually sell long bits, like bits that are that long that you could put into a screwdriver like this one. But since I have this one, I'm using it. And that's great. And it even looks comical when you use it for these screws, because the screwdriver is now out of frame completely because it's so comically long. Now, to crack open an old Mac, there's a few different ways. I can even see, this is the way that I did it the last time. I just pried it with one of these pry tools. Sometimes they just kind of come up. This one's not doing that. So another way that you can do this is you can put one of these screws back in. There's actually a special tool called the Mac Cracker that helps to crack open these cases. But if you do this, you can use the screwdriver to push down on that screw and just crack the top of the case a little bit. There we go. Okay. And you should be a little bit careful because this plastic is old and you don't want to damage it. There we go. Okay. And we're in. Like I said, be careful around this thing. There's even some warning signs, high voltage, don't touch what's underneath there because there's some high voltage caps. The other interesting thing about older Macs that you won't find on this one, if you have a Mac Plus or the original Macintosh, I think the SE, SE30, those actually have signatures inside of here of all the people that worked on those teams. And I think the Classic might be the first of these models that didn't have that. Yet another one of those little fun things that was kind of lost in the transition from the hacker culture Apple world to the very corporate and business-friendly Apple world that happened throughout the 90s. But anyway, let's take this thing down. We don't need it right now. And we'll focus on this, which is where all of the fun things are, including the extremely high voltage parts, which you do not want to touch because you could die. Okay, I went and grabbed one of these guys. I would have preferred a longer one, but all their longer screwdrivers have the same thing. Let me show you. It's this coating on the end, which adds a little resistance. This isn't gonna be a huge problem, but I do like being safe above all else. And if I go into continuity mode, when you touch these leads together, this will beep. Hear that? And if I touch it on the shaft of it and up here, it beeps and it shows you the resistance. So 1 ohm resistance, that's very low resistance. But if I touch here and then touch on this black stuff, it still beeps, so there's continuity. But as I move it, the resistance value changes. It can be up to 100 to 200 ohms. To be completely safe, you want as much continuity. You want a clean path all the way down the shaft of this, because I'm gonna clamp this thing onto it. So anyway, that's how that works. And we're gonna go ahead and discharge it now. If you do this a lot, you might not do all the things that I'm doing here. Not a big deal, but I like having like a belt and suspenders whenever I'm doing anything with high power electricity. And this is also not the best connection ever. There, that's better. So you just get this under here and you touch that little connector. And now that it's definitely discharged, we can unplug this connector. There we go. And I think I broke it. Okay, so fun little side note. I didn't realize this because it's been so long since I've worked on one of these things. These things are kind of like squeezy pins, and you have to squeeze them together to get that out, which I did not do. Okay, so the next step is I want to get this logic board out. I'll show it to you on the bottom side. I can take this off for now. It is right here, and this is the motherboard for the whole thing. There's also a fan grill down here that has a little bit of dust on it, and I'll hopefully remember to clean that later because there's actually a fan in the Classic. The original Macs didn't have a fan, and that actually caused some problems sometimes. So it's nice to see they added a couple features to the Classic, even though this was, at the time, not seen as a very good value of a computer, since it was basically an original Macintosh. During the time when the Mac 2 and 2 CI and 2 FX and all those Macs were coming out. Anyway, I think I remember, I'm not going to look this up because that would be silly. I think I remember just taking this out like that. This is the memory upgrade card, which later on we'll put those 2 new memory chips in here, and we should be able to get, I think, 4 megabytes total on the system. But that's that board. And then this one, I already unplugged these last time I took it apart. There's SCSI, and this is the floppy connector and the power connector. So this, I think, just slides out like that. And you can see that it's in pretty good condition, all things considered. There's some capacitors right here in the middle. There's a couple over on the side here. So we'll get those things off and start recapping this thing soon. But I also need to get at the analog board. That's this board over here. It has both the power supply, so it plugs in from the wall over here, and there's power circuits. And then there's analog control circuits for this CRT over here. So it has a lot of capacitors, and I'm going to get this off. I'm actually going to look up a guide for that since it's been a very long time since I took one of these apart, and hopefully that will work out for me. Whenever I see the high voltage thing, I like using gloves because that's just one extra layer of protection. Now, this thing is supposed to just pop off of here, but there is some hot glue holding it on. So I'm going to take this, just pull that hot glue away. So this comes right up. A comically long screwdriver to do this, but we just need to remove this black wire. I also have the hard drive connection back here. Hard drive power. This is not the way that I would want to design this. What I'm going to do first, before I start working on this, is just blow it off with my this guy, little fan duster. I'm going to do that outside because it's already, I see dust coming down out here, so give me just a second. Well, apparently the most dangerous thing I'll do today is taking this outside. I was just about hit by a car when I opened the door out there, so that was fun. Well, anyway, we have this out now, and I'm going to move this guy over, and I'll probably blow it out later too. You can see that there's the hard drive is right here, the floppy drive is underneath. Hopefully I won't need to do any service on those, but if I do, that would be a first for me. I've never worked on a floppy drive, and I know that they can be a little finicky. So I'm going to take this and set them aside on the ground. This is a pretty substantial pack of capacitors. On this motherboard, there's only a few. These are all surface mount. So this board was probably a lot cheaper for Apple to manufacture than this board. I can imagine a lot of cost of manufacturing went into this thing because it looks more complicated, especially if you're sitting there doing it by hand. The first step here was getting this back plate off that protects the bottom of the board so you don't shock yourself. And then also marking all the locations of the capacitors on the bottom, because from the bottom side you can't really see where they are that well. So I cleaned off some of the old flux on there, and then I used a pen to mark where all the locations were before I started desoldering. Now this guy, some people call it the moo gun, and you'll find out why after I turn it on and pull the trigger. Sounds kind of like a cow. The cool thing about this is it will not only heat up the solder so you don't have to have a soldering iron sitting here, it'll also pull a suction on it and kind of suck it out. And it saves a lot of time on through-hole components especially, because you don't have to sit there with solder braid or with one of those little manual solder suckers. So I'm going to see, this solder looks pretty good. I'm going to see if I can just go in and pull it out without having to also put in a little fresh solder. Sometimes if your board is really dirty, you might have to put a little fresh solder on each of these and maybe put a little extra flux on it, which I don't have mine sitting here. But I will get that if I need it. Hopefully I won't. For these surface mount caps on the main motherboard, I'm actually using a technique that I learned from a channel called III DIY or III DIY. I will try to link to them in the description, but basically these surface mount components put a lot of stress on the motherboard if you try heating them up from below. Hot air is probably the best way to do it, but that can even be tricky because these pads underneath them are usually pretty fragile because a little bit of electrolyte from the caps spills out onto them. And so if you put any mechanical stress on those pads, or if you heat them up a lot, they can rip off of the motherboard, and that makes it a lot harder to do these repairs. So with this technique, you basically use some snips, and you snip the top off of the can completely, and then you pull the rest of the can off the two leads that are inside of it, and then you pull the little plastic base up over that, and then you desolder each of the two legs of these things one at a time from underneath. It sounds like it would put more stress on it, but it seems like it doesn't. It's kind of unintuitive, but it worked here, and I got them all off. And I did notice after I did this that those capacitors over on the far side, the two that were sitting next to each other, did have a bit of leaking, and also the one that was closest to the camera was leaking a little bit, which was a little alarming. That did cause a little bit of corrosion on one or two of the legs of the IC right next to it. So I will definitely have to clean that up. So the analog board is all finished. I got all these caps out, and only one of them really had a little bit of a leak at the bottom. This one right here has a little bit of moisture down there, and I cleaned up the board on the top side wherever I saw a little dot of something coming out. So good thing I replaced these caps. And I did notice, like, it didn't look like there was much leak, but after I took these off, every single one of these had a little bit of leaking electrolytic fluid. And there are a couple pins with some corrosion on them. So I cleaned them with IPA alcohol, and I'm going to see how much I can clean it up. None of them look really bad, so that's a good thing, but there are a few that look worse than I thought they would look, and we'll see what happens after I get them cleaned up with a little solder and braid. So everything is recapped. I put tantalum caps on here. I bought both sets, the electrolytics and the tantalums. Tantalum caps, these little yellow guys, they have a tendency to explode if they go bad, but the electrolytics will leak within 20, 40, 60 years, however many. So I figured to give this thing a good shot at a long life, because it probably won't get used too much, I'll put the tantalums in, and they will not leak. There is one trace on this little chip here that is a little iffy. I reflowed it with some new solder, and hopefully that will work, but yeah, once the corrosion comes in, it doesn't look like anything else is affected, so I'm hoping that that'll be okay. I'm going to put this new battery in, and it looks like we go plus over here. This is just a little snap-in piece that you can put into these old weird LR123 or whatever that socket is. And it gives you the ability to have a non-leaky battery. How nice is that? I will also put these new sticks of memory onto the little memory card. We'll see if they fit. Hopefully they do. It's been a long time since I've done one of these little guys. And I'm thankful that the plastic on this thing is not breaking off. But there we go. Now I should have 2, 3, 4 megabytes of RAM in this. This card slots in like this. So we'll do that once we get it back in the machine and see how this thing works, or if it explodes. Now, sometimes you'd run this without the cover, and I think I might do that as well, just because I want to see if there's arcing inside of here. And obviously, if you... And there's a little jumper here that says sim installed, sim not installed, so I'll move that over to sim installed. I think that's everything, and we're going to see what happens when I turn this thing on. Okay, so power's plugged in so far. I'm going to put these on just in case I'm dumb and I try touching something. I've been known to do that. And I hear the hard drive spinning up even. Let's see if the screen comes on. The screen is not turning on. Oh, there it is. It is on. Everything is working. I'm going to turn this so you can see. Well, you can't really see because the screen is kind of dim. Oh, and there's Oscar the Grouch down there. Ah. So this Mac has the little utility on it that makes Oscar the Grouch say, "I love trash," whenever you throw some trash in there. The hard drive works and it boots up. That was a surprise, because a hard drive that's 40 years old, approaching 40 years old, that's pretty surprising. There are a couple caps on the hard drive's board too, so I'm a little nervous. What I might do is image that hard drive somehow. It is SCSI, and get the data off of it, and then maybe I'll put a blue SCSI in instead. But yeah, this is that's very cool. I am very happy about this. And you know what's interesting? My aunt might be able to come by today. She, one of my relatives is in town. She might come by, and if she does, I'm gonna boot this thing up for her and show her it running. And I think that'd be a good surprise for her, because she hasn't seen this probably for 25 or 35 years. So anyway, I'm gonna shut it down, put it back together, and we'll see what she has to say about it. But let's get this booted up and see if we can actually compute on here. There's that old hard drive. Thought there was a brightness control. Maybe the brightness control is in a system setting. We'll do that one. Demo. There you go. Look at that. In like 3 frames per second, and you can barely hear this thing. The speaker is not the loudest. Oh, here we go. Brightness. Does this work? There we go. Now we can see it's a little... It seems to get a little more blurry once you get brighter. There's an adjustment for that in there somewhere too, but I'm not going to mess with that yet. So those are the control panel things. Let's look at about the Finder. Does it have the RAM? So total memory 4 megabytes. Microsoft Word 5.1. You couldn't double click on the title. If you clicked on the title twice, it would let you edit it. So to open it, you have to double click on the folder. Microsoft Word 5.1. There's our little toolbar, and it's still loading in. Look at that. This is not a bad word processor for the day. This is a pretty darn good computer. I'm glad I didn't explode. Ooh, that's funny. The delete key is pretty small. Anything when it turned on the first. Not bad. Not bad at all. You don't have the sticky menus. All these little conventions with computers that you forget. You have to click and hold to hold the menu open. Alright, quit. But command keys work, so Command Q to quit. Hopefully it asks me. Yeah, I don't want to save that. Let's let that little hard drive go. Hey look, it's a save icon. Let's see. This could just eat this. SAM intercept scan. It's working. This is the beginner's luck here. First time I've restored an old Mac completely from scratch. And it's all working. Alright, so I'm going to shut this down And we'll see if my aunt comes later today. I'll clean the desk up a little bit. And there it is. You may switch off your Macintosh safely. That is a different thing. It's been a while since I've had to do that. But there it goes. Okay. I'm pretty happy. So Aunt Ellen, I got it all working now. And can you tell me a little bit of history on this Mac?
Well, this is one of the first Macintosh classic computers, and I bought it back in the early 1990s. I think it had like 4 gigabytes or 4 megabytes of memory, and a 3.5-inch floppy drive. Completely black and white, and the best part for me was the trash can where Oscar the Grouch came out and sang, "Oh, I love trash." And I did many a late night. I had 2 little kids at the time, and I did many a late night at my desk with this computer, writing speeches and articles and newsletters. And you were right, the software, the Macintosh software was very good for communications professionals. The graphics capabilities, the word processing, the fonts, all of that is true if you study the history of Macintosh.
Yeah.
So, and I went through each generation of Macintosh after that, like the laptop with black and white screen again,
Yep.
the clamshell.
You were the first person to have an iMac. I remember that.
Oh,
in our family.
I've almost forgotten that. And the $2,000 black and white laser printer.
Mm-hmm.
The cost has come down now, and you can
Yep.
do a whole lot more. Obviously, we have a whole room of servers on our wrists now. So, but I'm very impressed with your restoration of my computer, and it's good to see Oscar the Grouch again.
I'm hoping that it can be on there for another 40 years. It's almost 40 years, right? Something like that?
Yeah, if you do the math, but don't. It's just great to see it running. You can still do things with it.
Thank you for letting me take on that history and refurbish it.
It is a privilege. Mark, if he were here, would certainly be very interested in all of this, and he's here with us in spirit.
That was quite a project. And speaking of my late Uncle Mark, my dad and I are still working on restoring his first computer, an old Apple II, serial number 14196. And the Classic is but one of many old Macs I'm working my way through. I might do a few more on Level 2 Jeff, we'll see. I think the main takeaway today is with a little TLC, you can give new life to these old computers. And one thing that's really hammered home for me is the fact we used to be able to repair and upgrade our hardware and give new life to old tech. In 30 years, will any of our modern computers be relevant or even working? Until next time, I'm Jeff Geerling.